Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Grandstand Sports Data, where we turn numbers into edges and break down the NFL through the lens of betting. It's week 2, and we've got another heavyweight matchup right out of the gate. We have the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. In today's video, we're going to break down the advanced rankings, the fundamental factors that really drive this matchup, and of course, the betting lines and models predictions. So by the end, you'll see exactly where the edges lie and whether the data leans Eagles, Chiefs, or maybe even the total. So let's dive in. Okay, so first, quick reminder here, these aren't just going to be the raw stats. Early in the season, we use a formula about 75% preseason projections and then 25% week 1 results. That way we balance expectations with actual play, and then we avoid the trap of overreacting on just one game. Next week, we'll shade it more 50-50, and then the week after 25-75, and et cetera, et cetera. The reason why we do this is very simple. If we just did plain straight up power ratings, number one team would be the Indianapolis Colts, and I think we can all agree that they're not the number one team in the NFL. So, starting with the power ratings, Philadelphia sits at about number 4 here, while the Kansas City Chiefs come in at about number 11. The Eagles are grading out as a top tier team, while the Chiefs, they're sitting in that second tier, I guess I would call it. So let's stack up Philly's offense against Kansas City's defense. You can see the Eagles are putting up about very close to 28 points per game. That's ranked third in the NFL, while the Chiefs, their defense is giving up about 23 points per game, which is about 18th. So the glaring mismatch here is the turnovers. Philly is number 1 at protecting the football, while Kansas City's defense is only 28th at creating those turnovers. So that's going to be a major edge for the Eagles and them sustaining drives. I will say, if you look at Kansas City's defense, it looks like a lot of bend but don't break, but you can argue that with that scoring percentage. Let's roll on now to the Kansas City's offense versus Philly's defense. And the Chiefs, they project about a 24.5 points per game. That's ranking 9th in the NFL, but they've struggled with turnovers at 13th. Philly's defense, not really elite here, ranking 16th in points allowed, but they're opportunistic, right? 8th in takeaways. So while Kansas City can move the ball, they'll need to protect it against a defense that capitalizes on those mistakes. In the miscellaneous category, you can see coaching is one of the spots where Kansas City shines. Andy Reid and their crew, they rank first overall, while the Eagles are just right behind, sitting at number 2. So everywhere else, though, Philly has the advantage. Number 1 in red zone efficiency compared to Kansas City at 22nd. And then you got number 1 in turnover margin compared to Kansas City in 13th. I would say the huge takeaway here is going to be coaching will still make a difference with Kansas City, still make them dangerous, but Philly's efficiency, ball security, and then red zone edge all point toward the Eagles being the more complete team at this stage. So if Kansas City can't clean up those red zone trips, the Eagles might have the upper hand here. All right, so here we're going to break down the fundamental factors that basically drive this matchup, and more importantly, where each team holds the edge. So starting with matchups, Philly gets the nod here. Historically, favorites in a high total, they have been very profitable. 97 and 40 straight up, plus over 9 units on the money line. So that's a strong setup for the Eagles. You move over to the rest category. Philly once again has the edge with a favorable differential. So while the record itself is very close to 500, rest advantages tend to matter more as the season grinds on. Now, when we look at travel, you're talking about Kansas City comes into play. The Eagles have to travel 620 miles just to get over to Kansas City, and that's going to benefit them in that spot. So teams with an edge have shown statistical strength, and it's something worth keeping in mind when lining up these two clubs. For player quality, Kansas City also carries the edge there, and that's based on Madden rating. So last season, higher rated rosters still won more often than not, even if they didn't against the spread, because the against the spread record was definitely shaky. And when you combine that with all the with the coaching model where the Chiefs also hold the edge, it starts to look like Kansas City's leadership and strong roster could balance out some of Philly's matchups and rest advantages that you see here. Finally, in the miscellaneous contrarian factor, you can see Philadelphia comes back with an edge, a smaller one, but still notable for bettors who like to lean in that, contrarian in seeing those market inefficiencies. And here's the kicker, right? When a team owns the Madden edge and the coaching edge, according to our model, while their opponent has to travel about 620 miles, Those teams have gone 22-7 straight up in the past 2 seasons at an over 2.5 units of profit. So that exact setup is pointing in Kansas City's favor. So while the Eagles check the box in rest, matchups, and contrarian factors, the combination of roster quality, coaching, and travel trends lean towards those Kansas City Chiefs in this matchup. So normally this is the part of the breakdown where we show you the graphical illustrations, the betting trends. We track things like the return on risk for both the money line and the spread, and we also chart where teams are trending using moving averages. The problem is early in the year there just isn't enough of a sample size to make that information meaningful. So a couple of games in September can swing the numbers way too far in one direction, and that doesn't really give us a true read on a team. So that's why we're going to hold off until about week 4. We'll have more of a sample size. By then, the data is given enough depth. The return on, your risk of return on those metrics will start to stabilize, and then we can trust the story that it's telling. Once we hit that point, you'll see those visuals back in our previews every week, and they'll give us a much sharper lens into which teams are outperforming the market and which teams are falling behind. Now let's move on to the betting preview for the Eagles versus the Chiefs. The market currently has Philly listed as the -1.5 point favorite, with the line sitting at about -120. Kansas City comes back at that +1.5, priced at about +105, and the total is set at 46.5. So the books are telling us this is essentially a one possession game with moderate scoring expectations. Next, we're going to run the matchup through our model. And remember, this isn't one single outcome. This comes from about 10,000 Monte Carlo simulations of the game. So the projections show Philly winning by a score of 25-22 on average. And that translates into a spread projection of about -3 in favor of the Eagles. You can see the Eagles have won 62% of those 10,000 Monte Carlo simulations, while Kansas City only wins 38% of those. So while the market is hanging -1.5, our model suggests that the true number should be closer to -3 in favor of the Eagles. Finally, let's talk picks. So with all the information on the table, our model is going to lean Philly against the spread and Philly on the money line, and then the over in the football game. So the Eagles have the statistical edge in efficiency, red zone scoring, and that usually lines up with the simulations. The bottom line here is that the books expect a coin flip, but the model says the Eagles have just enough separation to justify backing them here, both straight up and against the number. I will say that the model also likes the over in this football game when the number was set at 46.5. You can see that the number, I believe, jumped to 47.5. And then if you add our prediction, we have 47 as the total. So it would now be an under. So if you're not getting this 46.5, please look at that. Please, factor that into your analysis. I know we have shown a few times that our model on the totals is actually profitable over the last 5 years. So this would switch to an under if it's 47.5. If it's not, and you can get at 46.5, go with the over. Hope that makes sense. That's just clearing everything up. So that wraps up our week 2 betting preview between the Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of our weekly betting previews and strategy videos. Drop a comment below. Let us know which side you're leaning on this matchup. Is it Eagles? Is it Chiefs? And then we'll keep the conversation going. And of course, share this video with a friend who's looking to get that edge on their bets this season. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.